Hi, my name is Kristen Chrisman. On June 22nd, 2025, U.S. President Trump committed an impeachable offense. He violated the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, and he violated the UN Charter by attacking 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. He did this without the approval of Congress, without the approval of the American people. The U.S. Constitution states that that Congress has the right to declare war. It states that the U.S. President is the commander-in-chief, but there's nothing to command if a war has not been declared. I'd like to read to you an article I wrote 5 years ago. It's been published on countercurrents.org on March 10th, 2020, and on transcend.org, that's Transcend Media Services, on March 16th, 2020. Iran and the U.S. Holy Code Book of Double Standard Morality. On January 3rd, 2020, the U.S. military, following President Trump's orders, killed Major General Qasim Soleimani, respected leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Group's Quds Force. I never understood the morality of U.S. foreign policy, but I'm getting the hang of it, thanks to the little-known pocket manual, the U.S. Holy Code Book of Double Standard Morality. According to U.S. Code, U.S. troops' killing of Soleimani is honorable because he's considered responsible for killing Americans. But if Iranians were to kill his American equivalent, the CIA director, whose role in killing is not subject to evaluation, this would be reprehensible. Similarly, crippling Iran with sanctions is considered sensible. Consider what the 1990 to 2003 sanctions did to Iraq. By 1997, reportedly 500,000 children, or at least several hundred thousand, had died from malnutrition. Sewage spilled into rivers, causing typhoid and dysentery epidemics because of the sanctions. Tens of thousands of Iraqis and their livestock died from lack of medicine. Crime soared. Families drank contaminated water and ate bread of flour and wood dust in homes without electricity. U.S. Code says such sanctions are for the best, but similar sanctions against Americans for the illegal coups, torture, drone attacks, invasions, and other international crimes of their unbridled government would be considered heartless. U.S. possession of 4,000 nukes, we are told, ensures security, as does U.S. contamination of Afghanistan, Iraq, and U.S. troops with radioactive depleted uranium. With the exception of an alarmed John F. Kennedy's adamant opposition, Israel's secret possession of an estimated 80 nukes has also been considered a blessing. Iranian nuclear development, however, even for purposes of energy, is reckless. According to U.S. Code, the British Balfour Declarations granting a homeland to Zionist Jews in Palestine was benevolent. But Britain's goal of limiting Zionist immigration so as not to displace peasant Arabs was malevolent. Zionist forceful displacement or killing by 1949 of 1 million Arabs is dismissed as benign. Moreover, the Jewish extremist organizations that terrorized Britain during World War II for trying to limit Zionist immigration, the Stern Gang led by Yitzhak Shamir and the Irgun led by Menachem Begin, were evidently so chivalrous that both leaders became Israeli prime ministers. But anyone, including Iranian-supported Hamas, who militantly supports the Balfour Declaration's forgotten pledge to protect non-Jewish Palestinians' rights, is a terrorist. During both world wars, the Allies' invasions of neutral Iran for oil and railroads were noble-minded. And while Iran's failure to willingly open its borders to help the Allies was deemed self-centered, U.S. failure to open its borders to help thousands of Jews escape Nazi extermination was considered only prudent to preserve American jobs and Protestant culture. In the 1950s, profit-seeking foreign corporations who dominated Iran's economy were kind, while Iranians who tried to remove foreign infiltration were selfish. Consequently, U.S. engineering conglomerate overseas consultants' lucrative plan, represented by future CIA Director Allen Dulles, to develop Iran for the Shah was enlightening. But Mohammad Mossadegh's popular nationalist movement that rejected funding for the plan was low down, as was his 1951 nationalization of the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. U.S. Code maintains that the CIA's 1953 toppling of the highly popular Mossadegh by bribing newspapers to publish anti-Mossadegh articles, paying mullahs to condemn Mossadegh, developing a network of anti-Mossadegh military commanders, buying an Iranian mob to create a pro-Shah parade, paying gangs to terrorize Tehran, and killing 300 Iranians in the process was clever, as was the U.S. government's reinstalling the Shah with his oppression, greed, and massive procurement of U.S. weapons. On the other hand, Iranian students taking Americans hostage in 1979, with one student shouting, "We will teach the CIA not to interfere with our country," was inappropriate. And while Saddam Hussein's 1990 invasion of the oligarchy of Kuwait was inexcusable and warranted the one-sided slaughter of a U.S. counter-invasion in 1991, Saddam Hussein's 1980 invasion of Iran and use of chemical weapons were convenient and merited U.S. assistance. U.S. Holy Code instructs us that while some killing is bad, other killing is good. According to U.S. Code, U.S.-supported Israel's killing of Arabs is good. Iranian-supported Hezbollah's killing of Israelis is bad. U.S.-supported Saudi Arabia's killing of Houthi Yemenis is good. Iranian-supported Houthi Yemenis' killing of Yemenis is bad. Militarily surrounding Iran, with U.S. troops and bases to the east in Pakistan and Afghanistan, to the north in Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan, to the west in Turkey, Iraq, and Kuwait, and to the south in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE and Oman, is something that Iran should serenely take in stride. But the USSR's planned deployment of missiles in Cuba in 1962 was cause for World War III, and the potential for North Korean missiles to reach the U.S. coast is justification for enormous alarm, if not a U.S. invasion. According to Holy Code, those who do not allow themselves to remain vulnerable to U.S. attack are only proving their malice. According to U.S. Code, 9/11 was appalling, when terrorists killed 3,000 primarily U.S. civilians. But the killing of more than 300,000 Mideastern civilians and more than 250,000 Mideastern opposition forces in post-9/11 U.S. war zones only brings us closer to worldwide justice, harmony, and freedom. Iran, like some U.S.-funded allies, has a despicable problem of internal oppression and torture. But let's look at international behavior. Has Iran ever done to the U.S. and Britain what they've done to Iran? Did Iran ever invade them? Did it topple a U.S. president? Did it train U.S. internal security forces as the CIA trained the Shah's brutal Savak? So why does any U.S. politician have the right to condemn Iran as aggressive and deserving of attack? By what logic can any U.S. politician insist that the U.S. has proven its right to retain sovereignty and possess nuclear weapons, while Iran has not? When has Iran ever harmed another nation more than it has been harmed itself? But U.S. Holy Code says that line of reasoning is irrelevant. According to U.S. Code, while Iran's strict oppression, systematic torture of Iranian prisoners, and funding of militants abroad are deplorable and hurt Iranians by depleting Iran's budget, The U.S. depletion of the American budget by spending trillions on invasions, committing coups, establishing black sites abroad, dismissing judicial rights prior to arrest and imprisonment, ignoring all rights prior to execution, terrorizing the Mideast with drones, funding dirty wars in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and exporting U.S. weapons worldwide is high-minded. Above all, U.S. Holy Code declares Muslims seeking to base their government upon the Sharia, often in reaction to corruption and oppression, are nothing but crazy extremists whose interpretation of religion provokes them to behave with violent cruelty. But we can rest assured that U.S. presidents, policymakers, and occupation leaders who feel convinced their coups and invasions are blessed by God, and their nation is specially created by God with a mission to bring freedom and light to the world. These noble Americans advocate violence that has a divine purpose. Like the violence of those U.S. troops who, prior to brutally attacking Fallujah, Iraq, were told by their Navy chaplain the absurd logic that they, like Jesus entering Jerusalem, were tools of mercy in a spiritual battle to break the bonds of hell. What I find most troublesome about double-standard morality is that when morality is determined by the identity of the actor and not the act, you've got a cruel case of selfish immorality and a dangerous sense of divinely inspired self-righteousness that hamstring our ability to ever achieve understanding and peace with the enemy. But don't think too hard about all that. Just keep your thinking shallow, swallow what you're told, and soon you won't resist the U.S. Holy Code. Thank you very much. And that was from 2020. Today, June 22nd's decision was yet another decision made by the highly prejudiced, wealth-oriented plutocrats who've been running the U.S. government since at least the 1890s. Those who supported the Biden administration, I mean, the officials and the people in the background, the U.S. propaganda machine who support the Biden administration, put down the Trump administration as the administration of billionaires. Plutocracy began in the 1890s. The Biden administration was run by millionaires. All the administrations have been like that. Trump is an idiot, as were all the presidents before him, at least since the 1890s. They take our taxes and use it to destroy others without our informed consent, without any care for our own values and needs, and without any care for the foreigners that they kill and cheat. U.S. economic hegemony has been a goal of the U.S. for centuries. I mean, we saw it with the mainland crossing across the continent, robbing and killing the Native Americans. It's continued ever since. A book I recommend by Lawrence Shoup, Wall Street's Think Tank, is excellent. And it shows how plutocrats, specifically the Council on Foreign Relations, have since the 1940s, since World War II, during World War II, they made U.S. economic hegemony the goal. That was the goal of U.S. participation in World War II. And that is why it seems like the U.S. has never stopped fighting since World War II. It hasn't. Because the U.S. goal of World War II was not just to defeat Hitler, Mussolini, and Hirohito. The goal was U.S. economic hegemony. And this is documented because the Council on Foreign Relations had study groups that worked arm in arm with the U.S. State Department. In fact, they were often one and the same. They worked together, and the goal was U.S. economic hegemony. Now, these people don't think of themselves as evil. They thought this was necessary in order to ensure that Germany wouldn't win. And they even said, not only do we need economic hegemony, we need to suppress the sovereignty of any nations that resist this hegemony. So, get the thinking, they're going to oppress other nations so that they have the power to defeat Germany, which is oppressive. They're going to kill, torture people so that the evil enemy, whether it's Germany or Russia or Iran, won't kill and torture people. The logic is highly prejudiced. Their minds are consumed with black and white thinking where they seem to be incapable of seeing their own cruelty and greed and prejudice. And I write about this. I haven't submitted my manuscript yet. I mean, I've tried over the years, but my volumes, they're always multi-volumes, and they're too long for any publisher, so I'm trying to get something written that's smaller. But I certainly make use of information by Lawrence Shoup, William Bloom, who wrote several excellent books, including Killing Hope, about U.S. coups abroad, and massive amounts of U.S. election interference abroad. The Brothers by Stephen Kinzer talks about the Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles. He talks about the coup in Iran. Also, there was an article in 1979 in the New York Times by Eric Pace, and he talks in 1979 about all the U.S. companies that were going to have to close down shop once the Shah was kicked out. That's what the U.S. foreign policy is all about, because it's run by people in the Council on Foreign Relations and other similar groups, plutocrats who are totally business-oriented. They're wealth-oriented, they're greed-oriented, they see themselves as good. They're incapable of seeing their own flaws. And I write about that in my book, but I'm telling you now, because who knows when my book will get published. If it's not accepted, I'll try to get it published on my own. But there are many other people I just mentioned. It's not just me. I rely on all these other books and many, many others that you can read in the meantime. Thank you very much for listening. It's dismaying what happened. It was completely shocking. Thank you also for watching my videos about Benji the bunny, who, as many of you know, is not a he, but is a mommy. And she even showed me how she nurses her babies in the afternoon. Even domestic bunnies don't nurse their babies in the afternoon. They do it in secret, but Benji showed me. And today I made them a bunny spa because of the huge excessive heat coming tomorrow. So when I came in from that this evening, that's when I learned about what the U.S. had done. And they can't say, oh, this is a precedent set by other presidents. We don't need to get Congress's consent. No, precedent is not an excuse. Just because other presidents have violated the Constitution doesn't give the current president the right to violate the Constitution. Thank you very, very much for listening. And please send the video along to others if you like it. Thank you very much and have a very good night. Thank you.